Hello.
Hello,
Yes, Todd, how are you?
I am good. You?
I'm okay. Good having you again on our platform.
I can hear you beautifully.
Great. I'm happy to be here
Me
today
too.
and happy to be hosting you again. I can hear you very well. Uh,
Yes, I am doing well this morning.
we are going live. Basically, we have started our show. We are live right now. Uh, all our viewers are welcome to yet this edition for today. We are having our guest, Todd Meyer from the US. We shall also be having our co host, Lynda Tilley, who will be also sharing more on the same topic tonight. Today, we are sharing on the topic, which is systematic racism and its effect on human progress. We are looking for thoughts on promoting world peace and unity. Today we are having Todd as our main host, our main guest, and will be sharing with us his own thoughts, experiences, observations on the topic at hand. And we shall also be waiting for Lynda Tilley, who will be joining us as we move on. Todd, you are welcome.
I'm good.
You are welcome on the show, and I would like to invite you to kickstart our talk show today.
Okay. I'm glad to be back. Week two. This is awesome. I'm glad I can be of help from the U.S. I'm Todd Meyer. I live in the middle of the U.S. Um, I don't really give out exactly where I'm at, but that's
Yeah,
just for all the humanism and the other things that I do. A lot of people, not a lot, but some people they frown on what I do. So that's to be expected. Doesn't deter me in any way. Um, I like this show because it's their mission to educate people, and I
yeah,
think the more educated people become, um, the better decisions they can make.
yeah,
Uh, uh, a person named George Satanya, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." And
yeah.
we're trying to eliminate that. We're trying to get it to where people can make good decisions based on good education. So I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Todd, and glad to have you back. We are going to have a nice one today, and we are going to be talking about systematic racism and its effect on humanity, and of course our progress, and also looking for thoughts on how to build world peace and unity. Todd is a humanist, is an author, and is a promoter of peace and unity. And I'm Kato Mukasa, your host. So Todd will be able to usher us into this topic today. And the floor now is yours. Let us hear from you what you have prepared for us and our viewers who are eagerly waiting to hear from you. Todd, back to you.
All righty. You might wonder as you're viewing why a white guy from the US cares. And it's because I live amongst all humans, whether we're black, we're white, we're Japanese, Chinese, Muslim, whatever. We all have to share this planet.
Mm.
And, if we can just come together and talk and work out our differences, things would be much better. Um, I'll start off by mentioning a date. It's 1619, and that'll be important later in my comments.
Yeah.
But to give you an idea, that's when it was assumed that the U.S., as a British settlement of 13 colonies, received their first slaves. Oop, sorry, let me adjust my chair just a hair here.
Okay.
Okay. My leg pushed the button and down I went. Anyway.
We're okay. We are having you fine.
But that's when it was first thought that slaves were brought to these colonies here in the U.S. before we were the actual United States. But really, Portuguese started it in the 1400s, around 1441 to be precise. And it's thought that around 1526 is when we really had the first slaves here in the colonies. The colonies benefited greatly from having those slaves, even though it was the wrong thing to do, to go to another country to take people forcefully, bring them back and treat them like less than. Yeah, that's all bad. That's why anybody would think that's a good idea. I don't know, but I didn't live back then, so we learn as we go, right?
Yeah.
There were also other countries like Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean that also had slaves. So we weren't the only ones doing it, but we sure jumped on board when we saw the opportunity. It saved numerous millions or billions of dollars in not having paid labor. So, you know, the owners could reap in all the benefits and give very little to the slaves. In 1705 here, before we were a United States and still the colonies, we came up with the Virginia Slave Codes. Now, the reason I'm talking about slavery is because it'll lead into racism. Racism didn't start on its own as a thing. It developed. So I'm just going to touch on this lightly here first. The African Americans were stripped away of any legal rights, legalized the barbaric and dehumanization of the nature of slavery. The roots of racism stem from different religions, the mission to Christianize the Black Africans, and the global accountability or acceptability of owning those of different faiths. If you were a Christian, you could have a non-Christian as a slave. If you were a Muslim, you could have a non-Muslim as a slave. Even in Africa, you could have slaves from opposing tribes. So it was worldwide. And like I say, the Portuguese started that and triggered it, and the Western civilization exploited it for their African goods, services, and bodies. But at some point, they needed another reason to justify having slaves. And that's where we get into what's known as eugenics. Eugenics means good birth. You might think of Hitler as an example of that. Through science and scientists were able to alter genes or alter specific things to get the best possible human at birth by either altering things in the body or sterilization of those people that they felt weren't of good quality, which is very, very saddening. We also did get good out of that. We were able to test for diseases. We had better birth rates with healthy babies. So there is a good side to it, but it doesn't overshadow what all that went on. We know that millions of Jews were killed because they were trying to get the bad genes out and leave only the good ones, so that they could get their superior race, which of course was whites. Some people will tell me, yeah, you're from the United States and you're a white man, so you're bad. Well, I'm not from the original colony. My last name indicates that I'm from Germany. So if I have anything in my past that's bad, it's Hitler. Okay. I'm not that I know of. I'm not related to him. And even if I was, it wouldn't matter. I'm who I am. So we're set apart from that. But this was the beginning of racism. And and it harmed a lot of people. It wasn't just African Americans. It was we had internment camps for the Japanese during World War II, where these were actual Americans, but they were just of Japanese descent, and they'd lived here their whole lives. But now they're suddenly being scooped up on the street, at their homes, wherever, taken to internment camps and kept there because of our fear of them. And we weren't sure who was the enemy and who was our friend. So it was also in this frame with eugenics that white was the top. You were fully human. But if you were African American, you were somewhere between that human and monkeys. So you weren't fully developed as a human. And so you were thought of as less. And that's where racism comes in. And then it just trickled off to other races and whatnot. I would like to encourage you guys to check out a video on YouTube if you're able. I'm not going to go into it. I think Dennis has a clip set up for us. It's about back in 1859. P.T. Barnum. I don't know if you know of Barnum and Bailey Circus, but yes. he put on an exhibit here in the U.S. At the New York Zoo, and in that exhibit he had placed a monkey and a black. I lost the word. Small, short person.
Buff. A black dwarf person.
The placing of the boy in the cage with a monkey is an outrage. The Negro race in America has a hard enough time as it is in getting away from the prejudice that's closely related to the monkey without having a member of the race placed on exhibition.
Leading men of science from Harvard and Princeton and Columbia University were saying that Africans were midway between an orangutan and a human being. So 100 years later, it should not come as much of a surprise that many people still cling to these notions of European superiority, African inferiority.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very moving. It's about 55 minutes long. And I'll tell you, I watched the other day and I just didn't know what to say. I mean, it's just, I encourage you to watch it. Now, do understand that we're not like that anymore. Just like we're not bringing slaves here, but there is this racism we have in this country where that thought is there. And you saw that Confederate flag. I'll get to that here in a minute. Those are the people in this country today who are white men, mostly Christian, who think that they are the superior race and that anything less than that should be sent packing, get them out of here. They shouldn't have equal rights. There's just all kinds of evil, ugly things. But yeah, I encourage you to watch that film.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me at all, Kato?
Quite interesting. Thank you so much. You are breaking down the history of racism. You are breaking down the history of racism in the US from the perspective of the country where you are. And that's quite interesting because today we know that basically when we talk about racism, there are so many headlines that show us how America is structured along races. The race card still plays a very big role in the way things are done in the US. We have had, of course, the shootings of so many Black people on their way to their works, where they stay, and all that. Of course, we have seen the demonstrations. Can you take us through a few structural imbalances in the US where we see systematic racism showing its ugly face?
Sure, you bet.
Yeah.
Back in the earlier 20th century, around the 1930s, even before that, but we went through a very bad time in this country where blacks weren't considered to be fully human. They were considered to be less than what was optimal. Therefore, certain things were put in, actual laws were made. We had separate restrooms. There was whites only restrooms, whites only drinking fountains, whites only areas on public transportation like buses where blacks could not sit. And that brings up something really good. That was Rosa Parks. If Dennis could show Rosa Parks' picture. Back in 1955, she was, that's her there. I believe that was in 2011, I believe. Where she's receiving an award from President Clinton at the time. But back when she was younger, she transported from work to home using the bus. And blacks were supposed to stay in the back of the bus, leaving the front open for the whites only. She sat in that whites only area and she refused to get out of her seat to give it up for a black man or for a white man. And they arrested her. And we've got quite a few people in our past that did this, that were fed up, that wanted to be, treated better, be equal. And she's one of those that people look to as an example of what can be done with just one person. And thank you, Dennis. I appreciate you putting that picture up there. She actually sparked a 40,000 people protest. Let me read here. Which later paved the way for rights, for black rights, for equal rights in our country. So one person can make a difference. When all it takes is one person to stand up and say, this isn't right. All those who were afraid to stand up are now behind you. And they're opening up and they're saying we've had enough and we're behind her or him, whoever it is. There was a time when that all transpired. I'd like to get to this 1619 that I was speaking of right at the beginning, and I said would be important later. We have something here called the 1619 Project. It was started in New York by the New York Times. They're a major publication around the world. This was in 2019. They began this with Nicole Hannah-Jones. She and the Times wanted to restructure our history taught in schools so that it reflected the Black history as well. Not just race or slavery was bad, but bring out the racism, bring out the fact that this is a problem, and educate people to, kids to know that this is a problem. Which ultimately turned into what we call critical race theory. Critical race theory is the theory that one group of people will look at other people in a different way as less than. And they want the kids in schools to learn that this is bad and this is how we can do better. But there are a lot of opponents to that, and you would guess most of them are white guys. They don't want it because they're afraid the kids are being taught that whites are racist by nature and that no, you can't trust a white person. And so they've been fighting this in the court. They're even doing it today. I was watching on CNN last night. It's still a big issue. It's still ongoing fight. I do see some hope in it, though, because our younger generations coming up today are more inclusive. They go off to college. They meet people from all over the world, all different skin colors, and they just realize that they're people. They're just people. And with different points of view, different backgrounds, different everything, and that we need to be sitting down and talking with each other to understand our common ground,
Mm.
so that then when we have difficulties, we are better off to be able to solve those problems. I'd like to point out some other people in our past that have been pro equal rights or pro non-slavery, that sort of thing. Way back in well, this person was born in 1822 to 1913. It's Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman, are you familiar with that person?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
In case our viewers don't know, she was a slave at the time, and she, for many years, and she escaped her slavery and went to what we call a free state, where slaves were not slaves, they were free people. And she escaped to that other state, and later she returned back to her original slavery camp, or whatever you'd call it, plantation, to free her family. And she worked through a program called that later became known as the Underground Railroad. She funneled out at least 70 people and families over a period of time, going back and forth, risking her life and safety to get people out into safe states that had freedom. So and then we already saw about Rosa Parks. A big name that is from our past, from the 60s, is Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
He led the civil rights movement, was involved in many protests in the 50s and 60s. He was a spokesman for the Montgomery bus boycott, which was what Rosa Parks had started. At that point, because of what she did, 40,000 people stood up and said, "Yeah, we're tired of this. We want something done," and they quit using public transportation. Just their impact on the dollars of the white owners was enough to spur legislation to get civil rights. Mr. King also, in 1964, at the age of 35, won the Nobel Peace Prize. I can't tell you how inspirational he is to so many people, both black and white, here in this country. I choke up a little bit when I talk about him, because he was just a great man, and he wasn't afraid to stand up and be out in public. There's also a statue that was erected out of concrete depicting him. It's a 30-foot tall stone statue called the Stone of Hope. And it's a good representation of him, and with his arms folded, he meant business. He wasn't going to be pushed down or back down. But in, I believe it was 1968, he was assassinated. So that's he knew that would be a possibility, and but he didn't shirk his responsibility. He stood right out there and said what he had to say, and yeah, he's just a great man from our past and a great United States citizen for sure. I think that's all I have for pictures for that.
Yes.
So are there any questions, Kato,
Yes.
from
Yes.
anyone?
Yes. Yes. Just an observation. I'll just make an observation from what you have said for our viewers to be able to follow it much more clearly. Just to say, as you sip on a cup of tea, that slavery we have talked about happened. African Americans and others were enslaved for over 250 years on plantations. It took over 250 years of slavery on the plantations. But even when it was getting declared as illegal, there was an introduction of what they call the Jim Crow laws.
Yes.
Which you know very well, which
yes,
made voting for colored people of color very hard, which made work very hard for people of color, which made access to education quite a challenge for people of color. And the Jim Crow laws existed for over 100 years.
Yes.
But what is disturbing that even when the Jim Crow laws were abolished following the civil rights movement of Martin Luther Jr. and others, Malcolm X and others, we still see that structural racism, systematic racism still exists in the US. We see that the way jobs opportunities are given, still there's a problem. And this one doesn't actually mean people of color alone. We're talking about people from Asia. We're talking about Mexican. We're talking about other people. That there is a lot of structural imbalances. We look at education I've talked about. We look at education which hides the facts. You talked about the critical race theory, which ideally is a good theory, which would expose the wrongs so that people can be able to understand and move forward. But people still say, no, this is wrong. Because if you open up the ugly past, people are going to be more discriminating, people are going to be more racists. And you see that the education system still hides. Again, when you look at the justice system, the criminal justice system, we have been looking at trends of African Americans committing crimes and compare them with people of other skin color.
Sure.
And you look at same crime, same offense, different penalties. And statistically, they are telling us, when you look at statistics, that people of African Americans are flooding jails, into prisons. Many of them are getting imprisoned over crimes that they would have been ideally out on community service. So when you talk about systematic racism, people would like to hear such examples that are affecting the US, that are making it very hard for people of color, for the Latinos, for the Muslims to exist peacefully in a country that would ideally be a free world. So we would like to hear more of those examples, and then we look at the possibility of having better laws, better improvements in handling these structural imbalances.
Yes, you're right on all of those points. You are. Now the Jim Crow laws, those were the whites only fountains and whites only seating in buses. Those were all laws. Those were, that's all part of that. And Martin Luther King was fighting against those very, very laws. Yes, we do have still a problem. Anywhere you look, there is an issue with it. Everywhere from education opportunities to housing opportunities to our prison system to the police force that's out and amongst the public. As you know, and just in the last few years, we've had many Black individuals killed that were unarmed. They weren't a threat. It shouldn't have happened. Police are being fired. Some are being put in prison for what they've done. It seems like every year or every couple of years, some Black man dies under the hand of a police officer, and it's almost always a white officer that does it. I'll give you a little bit of good news, and that is that, yes, this has been a problem, but like I say, I have faith in the young generations coming out, going to college, learning about other people, learning that they're not a threat. We also have police officers facing crime or facing prison time for their actions. So that's getting out there. The prison system, you're right, is predominantly Black. And it's for minor things like possession of marijuana, which that is also being worked on. Many states here in the U.S. have legalized it. It's still not a federal legalized substance, and in such, let's just take example of Colorado, who was one of the first states to legalize it. They cannot have a bank account, the company that sells this product, because it's not federally backed. And so when they first started, they had to get a huge vault to hold all the cash, because that's where their money was kept. If you can imagine, they had to hire guards with guns to stand in front of this thing, you know. So it's getting better. I'm not 100% crazy about it being legalized, just because when you're a drunk driver, they have a test to find out how drunk you are, and there are laws to certain limits. With marijuana, there's nothing, you know. So I don't know. I think it'd be better if we had some way to test it. But anyway, but a lot of them laws, like the minimal carry laws and having a little possession on you, a lot of those people, they're working to get them out. Get them out of the prison system. The prison system in itself is a problem because it just houses people. It doesn't educate people to come back into society. But there are people working on that too, which is promising. So there are actually companies that will hire people from prison because they realize that they've done their time, that they're remorseful over it, and they want to be better, and they just need a chance. And so that's a good positive note. But yes, we do have problems still today in 2023. You know, it's better than it was in the 30s and 40s and 50s, but we're not quite there yet. Now, a lot of the problem we're getting from the people who keep this continually in our system are getting older. They're the older generations, my age and older, who were raised in a time when they were the superior race, and that's the way it was. And they don't know any different. The old adage, teaching old dog new tricks. They just don't take it. They're afraid. They're worried for their jobs will be taken away, or they'll have to pay more taxes to support some lazy guy. When they totally ignore the fact that the reason that person doesn't have a job is because they've been suppressed their whole lives. Their family, generations, for 400 years have been told you're worthless. You're less than. Yeah, that's going to upset some people. They're going to do some crimes. Because they're working out that frustration, and those people are dying off. Not that we're killing them or running them over, but they are, you know, as time goes, in the next 30 or 40 years, I think things will look a lot better in this country as far as race relations go. There will be a lot more people accepting and a lot less people that are critical, and it's just going to be time to work it out. You have anything else there?
Yeah. I'm looking at
you've got some questions coming in.
Concern, just sharing with you, not more of questions, but something to continue backing up what you have shared with us from my own perspective. I'm looking at issues to do with the banking sector, for example, and their policies on lending. When you go deep and see how loans can be acquired, the requirements. In most cases, people of color and other minorities are going to be finding it very hard to be able to access capital, to be able to get loans from the banking structure, because they don't have what it takes to get these loans. And perpetually, they are kept in poverty. When you look at the health sector, still it's the same problem, that not everyone is going to be able to access the social amenities because they lack the insurance, they lack the support that should be available to them. Some states, when I was researching in 2021, they were doing passing laws on gerrymandering, where you would be able to restrict voting in certain areas, given certain circumstances, and this will be affecting people of color and other minorities. There have been gerrymandering in some states from 2021 in the US.
Right.
So I look at all these instances and see that there's a lot of work to be done to ensure that there is more equity. I will not call up for equality, but more equity, where those who are deep in the low class are able to be given opportunities to be able to access other opportunities like other people. For example, ownership of
Right.
homes in the US is quite hard, especially for people of color and other minorities. It becomes very hard because of the conditions that do exist. It makes it harder for people to own homes. It makes it harder for people to get insurance. It makes it harder for people to get equal treatment when they want to access loans. So these are issues people have been asking. What can be done so that we can have a much more fairer society, a much more fair country? The US is, because people look at it as the beacon of hope, as
Right.
A place where people go and get their dreams get done. So from your perspective, looking at all those different structural inequalities in the US, and of course the politicking that happens, what should be the way forward for people in the US? What could be done to reduce on this kind of inequalities in your view?
For as long back as I can think, the banking sector has, what they've done is they've taken the city map and they've decided which is the most sought after land or homes. And those people get loans, no problem. You got no problem. Then they have a section that are people of, say, middle class that have normal 40-hour jobs, 40-hour-a-week jobs that make, good amount of money. They're not rich, but they can save, they can do vacations, whatnot. Okay, those people, no problem. We can give them loans. Then we have a section of the city where it doesn't matter what you're doing in your day-to-day career or whatever, and you could be upper middle class, but if you live in that district, you don't get anything. You don't get it, it doesn't matter. It wasn't gone on individual, but it was gone on where you were actually living. And all the cities in all of the United States had that. It's the bank's way of covering themselves so that they don't give out bad loans. But that's changing too. That's becoming, people are becoming more aware of that. I know just in the last number of years, my city has sectioned off within that won't give a loan area, an actual so many block section to redevelop, to bring it back up, which is good. I mean, it's proactive. It's taking and sticking money in a place that normally wouldn't get it, and bringing the values up so that then others will move into that area and bring the rest of it up with it. That's part of the solution. I just think that more education, giving people who don't have access to these better jobs because of skin color or whatever, it's just, if I had my way, there would be a program where, and I thought this out before and talked with others about it, is I would call it the pay it forward plan. We would come to you in that impoverished neighborhood and we would say, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What do you want to go to school to learn how to be? Whether it's trade school or a college degree or whatever, even if it's a self-employed business owner, and give them the education free to get to that point. Because once they get to that point, they become active citizens in the community. They pay taxes. That's more money for the city. There's benefits to that, to having that person better themselves. And not only that, but you're bringing up another generation of people who saw dad get that job And I want to be like that. And dad can afford to send me to school because he has that education. And it just goes from there. Those people don't pay that back. In order to keep it, they have to keep their grades up, which means we will give them the resources to keep their grades up. We want them to be successful. At the end of that 4 or 5 years, we'll place you in a job. We'll help you find that job that will make you happy, give you purpose in life, to be able to raise a family and be confident. We're paying it forward. We're putting money in to help somebody better themselves so that later they aren't a drain on our society. They aren't taking money from a system and perpetuating it. It's a goal that would bring a lot of people up, and it would just blossom from there because of the people that, the kids they have, the kids see what they can do if they go to school. Those people will pay for school, but that first person that's been stuck there in that urban environment, if they're given an opportunity to rise above it all, give them just what they need, a little help, and it'll go. I know there's social programs, but I don't think they'd meet the mark. I just don't. They do the bare minimum. The kids still have to pay for their own schooling, which they have to earn by working part-time, which, yeah, that's the way it should be. But when you've been put down for 400 years and constantly told that you're less than, there needs to be something stronger than just, flipping hamburgers for, $7.75 or whatever the minimum wage is today. There needs to be more. There needs to be someone there that they can look to for help, for answers. But I don't know. It's one guy in a small town of a big country, and
about
it starts somewhere, don't it? So, and it takes time. It takes time to get that implemented and get the right people interested in it.
Talking about environment hazards and waste disposal, it reminds me of the 2014 Flint hazard disposal crisis in Michigan, where reports came that the Flint crisis of waste disposal, they were deliberately powering waste products in residents of people of color. And this was affecting the children, the pregnant mothers, and all that. It was a very big thing in 2014, the Black Flint, Michigan waste disposal.
That hasn't been fixed yet.
Yeah, and it hasn't even been fixed yet.
No, that's still a problem. Yes. It's just being ignored.
I remember following that, and many Black people were concerned because their children were getting diseased, they were getting sick, others were dying of cancers, and the health crisis affected them for a long, long time. 2014, up to now, you're telling me it happened. So these are some of the structural imbalances, the examples of racism. Why should we be disposing of hazardous waste products in people's homes, in places where people stay? Because companies are powerful, because politicians can be compromised. These are examples which are hurting people, and people continue wondering, how can we redesign systems to favor everyone? And of course, when we talk about racism, people should know that it doesn't actually affect Black people only. Also, white, poor people are affected.
Well, it's those areas, those urban areas, that section of the city where no loans will go out. Nothing will be done. These people are having to live in these areas because the rent is low, because the rent's cheap, and it's just changing the mindset of the people at the top that control this stuff, that take care of our cities, our mayors, our governors, of the state, our senators, to get them to understand that if you bring up the quality of life in a certain area, people will have hope for something better. Too many are in the mindset that we're not going to throw money at that problem because they'll just, tear it up. It's like we're not going to put a bunch of money into somebody's house if they're just going to destroy it, because they don't take care of their things. They don't appreciate it or whatever. And it goes back to my, raising people up one at a time. And, but it also needs to happen at the top. The mindset needs to change that if we improve this area, it will improve everything. And it's just getting people to realize that it's not a drain on the city's finances. It's an investment in a better life and for the community. If you raise up the lowest among us, the rest will come, and you'll make the money up later as people come in and become taxpayers because you have a nice community to look at. It's getting that mindset changed. Too many of them look at it as just, let's just ignore that. Let's put up fencing. People coming into town can't see it. It's just the mindset of those in control.
Exactly, because for example, talking about the criminal justice system in the US and how unfair it is to the people of color, I'll give you a few statistics. That, for example, the African Americans form about 39% of the American population. They are less than 40% of the American population. But when you look at those in prison, form 60% of the prisoners. They form less than 40% of the population, but they form 60% of the prisoners in the US. And 1 in 3 men among people of color is likely to be in prison. And many women don't have men because their men have been imprisoned. Children grow without fathers.
Yes.
There are many cases, 60% cases of young mothers, 60% cases of single women who are more likely to be people of color. So when you look at these challenges and the way they affect the family setup, where you have many Black men in prisons because they are into crime, because the system basically will put them in prison even when they would have been, say, on community service. There is too much gun violence, which of course happens in these communities. And the question should be, why is it so much affecting people of color? Why are they so much involved in this kind of danger, illegal activities? What's the cause of the stress? What's the cause of the poverty? What's the cause of the crime rate? You find out that it's more because of the imbalances in the structure.
Right.
More because of the lack of opportunities, that they are relegated to do certain things. They are going to be more forced into doing crime, petty crime, to survive. And the results will be ending up in prison. So we need to look at all these issues, aggregate, and then find a way. How do we start addressing the issue of unemployment? How do we start addressing the issue of education for everyone? Opportunities in the banking sector, getting loans, having people get opportunities. One of the American atheists, I think it's called Uma, was talking about the Black church, the African American church, and how it has been able to brainwash so many African Americans that every Sunday they take money to these churches, and on Monday the Black pastors will withdraw the money, take the money and take it to the bank. And the banks are owned by either Asian Americans or white Americans who will tomorrow go and buy land in Black communities and evict them. So you were saying that they are using your own money, get this money, $50 a week, tithe it in church, the pastor takes it to his account, and when the bank is motivated by giving out loans to big people, business people who are not Black people in most cases, because they don't have qualities to get the loans, and they're going to evict you from your own places of residence. So you see the cycle of poverty, which also goes into mindset change. that there are so
Right.
many things that tie people of color into this kind of poverty. Some of them are self-inflicted.
Right.
Self-inflicted, that no one actually is hurting them, that they hurt themselves. They hurt themselves, they're into drugs. Why? There's too much teenage pregnancies. There's too much single motherhood among the
Right.
Black community and people of color. So there's a need to change mindset. We
Right.
should start with one person teaching another. And this is where I give you credit on the work we are doing in
Thank you.
your community. Please continue. That was an observation from what you have been saying.
Right. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, it does take one person helping one person, and we're trying to get rid of that mindset of you know, not white are bad, and it's just a bad, ugly cycle. You're right about the churches. You know, people give their tithes, you know, their 10% or whatever they can afford, to people who then take that money and buy up the property that you're living in, and then evict you. You know, I mean, it's terrible. That's, you know, I don't know how bad that is here. I've worked in a few of those churches, helping build the buildings and whatnot, and met the pastors and so on. But I don't attend. I don't go to church, so I don't see that here personally. But yeah, I can see how that is a problem. I mean, we have mega churches in this country where they take in billions or millions of dollars, and the pastor lives in, you know, a $7 million mansion. It's just crazy.
Yeah, we thank you, Todd. Thank you, Todd. We have Lynda Tilley joining us
I
right
see
now.
her. She's been popping in here.
Yeah, she has joined us. We are happy to have her. I'm happy that Todd has been able to give us a very good analysis of the situation in the US about racism, and we are looking for a way forward. And we are saying that each one is going to be teaching one. Each one of us has a role to play. And basically, I want to emphasize what I have said. It's not right to say that whites are racists or blacks are racists. In each of us have the potential to be a racist. I think that should be clear. There's none.
Right.
You cannot say that whites are racist. I always disagree with that. Blacks are racist too. I know so many racist Black people. I mean, racism is within us. It's upon us to deliberately work towards seeing people not because of their skin color, but because of the good in them. And this is what humanism is teaching us. This is what we are preaching as humanists. Because when you have a bias, you forget that actually even Black people, Asians, Latinos have done worse things. They have committed crimes. They have been segregative. They have done so many bad things. People are people. And that's the message. So when you begin looking at people and say, oh, everyone is like this, no. That's why I was giving the example of many poor white people in the US. Many poor white people, because capitalism doesn't care your skin color.
Right.
A rich man will come and buy a place and evict everyone because they want to put a factory. They'll go and create wars, create conflicts because they want to sell their guns. It doesn't matter whether they are Black people owning the gun company, or Asians, or Arabs, or Germans, or Americans. They simply want to make profits. So we need to understand that racism doesn't actually mean that it's one particular people against the other. It's one person, like the rich against the poor. And for them, they won't mind whether you are white or Black or Latino or Arab.
Right.
What they want is to make profits. What they want is to accumulate more and more wealth. So people should understand, not tag racism along color lines. That if someone is white, is a racist. No. Lynda and you and many other white friends of mine have been doing a great job empowering Black people. So until when we wake up as people and understand that we are humans first.
Exactly right. That is exactly right.
Each and every one of us has a role to play.
They do.
In ending suffering, in ending poverty, in ending corruption, in ending bad leadership within our own localities, then we are going to be able to move forward. So
Right.
I want to thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to having Lynda on the show because she also had her own take. So we are going to give Lynda a chance to talk to the audience. Lynda, welcome.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm late. We've had no electricity here. We've presently got no electricity, and we've got water issues, water cuts across South Africa, and our rural communities and our black suburbs have less than most. I live in a suburb that's not classed as a white suburb. So I'm hit by that, but normally it's our load shedding and electricity and water cuts are mostly targeted on non-white people. So they're really suffering. So I complain myself, but at least I don't have it as bad as people in some of our provinces like the Free State. Right, I don't know if you can see me. I've got a view of my ceiling up there. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to catch up on the show later, what I've missed, because I wasn't able to watch any of it, and I'm really apologetic that I'm so late. It's much earlier than we normally film the show as well, and that's also thrown out with our electricity and stuff. So, but anyway, I'm here now. So thank you so much. It's good to see you both again. Todd, it's lovely to have you back again. I've had a very busy week, so I haven't been in touch with anyone. And now that I'm online, everyone's phoning me and I'm getting missed calls and things on Facebook. So can you guys stop it, please? I don't get a minute's peace. Jesus, all my notifications are coming in. So thanks. So Kato, if you can just fill me in on where you are with the show and I can join in with you.
Yeah, welcome Lynda. Welcome Lynda, and happy
Thank
to have you. We have had a very wonderful analysis of the American racial structures and biases, and Todd was able to take us through the history of systematic racism in America. We've been able to talk about the Jim Crow laws, the activists like King and others, and then we have been able to look at how it is manifested today, the legal structure, the banking sector, the education system, and all that. So we have been able to look at racism from the American perspective, sharing ideas here. And of course, our conclusion was that, among others, that all of us have a potential to be racists. We shouldn't actually tag it to a particular skin color, say whites are racists, even us black people are racist, even Asians are racist, even Arabs are racist. All of us have a potential to be racists, but the way we handle the situation, I was able to say that people like you, Lynda and Todd, we have been able to do a lot for the black community. So, and each of us, in our own small ways, are making a contribution. So we are saying, as Todd has said, that education, empowering our communities, each of us doing whatever they can to sensitize people is the only way getting out of the race trap. It's the only way of creating the equity, the fairness we all need to see in our structure. So we have seen, we have heard, we have shared from the American perspective. Now it's time to hear from you, Lynda, taking us through your own observation and perspective, and then we shall have it as a great show at the end of the day. Welcome, Lynda, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. No, I'm sorry that I'm so late. I'll really look forward to listening to that side of it, because it's so nice to get a true perspective from exactly what's happening in America and not what we are fed through our propaganda media across the world. It's nice to think a great thing with social media now as well is that if we hear of something going on in another country, we can just chat to a person there and find out exactly what the true story is and what's really going on. And I know we find in Africa that it's a lot worse often than what is being reported in the press, and Uganda and Nigeria are examples of that. So that's really great. And the fact that you touched on how, well, the systemic or institutionalized racism, and I think that I haven't checked, but I think that South Africa is possibly the country in Africa that has the highest number of white people living in it still. Certainly land ownership, 72% of South Africa's land is owned by white people. Shockingly, but true, that is what's happened. And I think that I know for a fact that in countries I've lived in, I lived in Tanzania for most of my adult life. So there was never any racism there towards white people. Kenya a little bit, but not so bad. And I mean, countries like Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, I'm trying to think of other countries where I've lived or worked in, I've never encountered white on black racism as much as I have in South Africa. So I think the issue also, South Africa was the last country to gain its fake independence. And it's also a very different country because it has the Trek word, the settlers, the Dutch settlers, which are the Afrikaans people today. And I actually never realized this. It was only when I had Ugandan friends recently visiting me that they couldn't understand how some white lady was speaking on the phone, and they didn't understand. And then I said, it's an Afrikaans person. And he said, but aren't you all the same? Aren't you white people all the same? And I said, no, there's a very distinct difference between the Afrikaners and the English-speaking whites. And not so much now, but particularly when I first came to South Africa, I was very much, I can't compare it to black-white racism, but the Afrikaans people did not like the English people. You would not intermarry or anything like that. So that there is that racism. And I mean, we know even between countries and things as well, you know, England and Germany and that. So basically, I think that I'm horrified at the level of racism in America. I didn't actually realize it was so bad until George Floyd. Actually, before that, when all the statues they started taking down, I couldn't believe there were still statues of people like Rhodes and that around in America, because we don't pay much attention to things like that. And,
Right.
and then I realized how bad it really is, because we tend, the image that's sold to us of America is that everybody has equal rights, and we see all these black people that are achieving great things, and we had Obama and all that. So we tend to think that, you know, that we all aspire, I know in Tanzania and everything, to be like the American people, that they are a sign of it working, and black people rising into positions of power and running countries, and that there's hope for black people. But then the reality hit when I was horrified, and I started learning about the police violence in America, and
Right.
about the absolute, I mean, I've said before that I do think that America, because of being more developed, is to blame for the negative image created in particular of the black male as being this gangster, bad father, sex crazed, drunkard kind of image has been put on
Right.
black men in general. If you know, even here in South Africa, if there's 4 black men driving slowly in a car past a house, immediately it's a gang or it's drug dealers. But 4 white guys doing the same, people don't even notice it. And I think that's also what we say with the institutionalized racism, is that people have got, it's almost like a genetic trait that I see in South Africa, that is people are so racist, they don't even realize they're being racist.
Right.
And for a person to say to me, I'm not racist, well, first of all, if you're even saying that or it's a consideration, then you are. What I've started saying to people here in South Africa is, that's fantastic. Tell me what you have done in the last 29 years for the black South African people. So you're not racist. What are you doing? Because they are still oppressed. There is still a huge racism, and apartheid too is what I call it in this country. What are you doing? What have you done in 29 years? What differences have you made? What rights have you been able to get instated? What black people have you helped? And they can often very much, they don't. The idea of not being racist is, oh, we've got black neighbors. Our kids go to school with black children. But that's not a choice, that's law. And they still very much keep to themselves. So it's really, really bad. My daughter has always dated black men, boys, and she has been targeted ruthlessly. I had to take her out of mainstream school by whites, and by black girls who say, stay in your lane, you stay in your color lane. You don't come into our color lane and take our men. So it got so bad for her when she first started at an all-girls high school. And she said to me, Mommy, she said, I can't help it, who I'm attracted to. She said, black men are so much nicer than white men. They treat us better than our white brothers do. And they are respectful. And the thing that my daughter says is that they have a sense of family, respect for their parents and things, which the white kids don't have. Now, that is a child, she'll be 19 at the end of this year, but she has grown up, her and her brother, in East Africa for the first years of their lives. And then they came into South Africa. So they were not brought up even knowing that there was a difference between people according to color. So I have seen myself how my children have suffered during our Durban looting. My son went through such severe trauma, and I eventually found out what it was. It's because there was a whole lot of killing of the Indian people in Durban, and he had Indian friends, and he was devastated. Why are people killing the Indians? Is my friend's family going to be safe? Are they safe? Why are they killing the Indians? And I had to say, I was in tears having to explain to my son in the year 2020 or whenever it was, that was so far advanced that I still had to explain to my children about racism, what it is, because they didn't understand it. And I've seen it in the schools from kids younger than my own children, when they were little, still my kids were younger, where my kids would come home and say things to me like, why are they calling my friend black? Why aren't they calling her by her name? And try explaining racism to a child. It's like people, they're discriminating against people as if you discriminate against someone because they're taller than you, or they're shorter than you, or they're fatter, or they're thinner. That's how stupid racism is.
Right.
So I have seen my own children suffer with that, where basically now any socializing and friendships and everything is in my home, because we can't. My daughter's attitude is, well, she doesn't care what they think. She's not going to buckle down to the way they are. She was invited to parties and that, and they'd say, well, you can come to my birthday party, but you cannot bring your boyfriend with you. And her attitude was, well, I'm just going to take him anyway, and they must just. This is who I am. But I had to say to her, Logan, you can't do that, because the South African racism is so cleverly done. They will make him feel so uncomfortable, especially if there's white men and alcohol involved at like a party where the parents will all go off drinking and everything. The way they will make him feel, the way they will look at him. And my daughter's just recently, she's traveling through to Cape Town, and she's on a coach with her boyfriend. And she has contacted me late last night. They were in the Free State, which is a very Afrikaans province, and she couldn't believe how they were being treated in shops when they stopped over for like layovers and everything. She couldn't understand why the people were being so rude to her, and she's not used to that treatment. And she said her boyfriend told her it's because they're a mixed couple and they're in a very predominantly Boer, white Afrikaans dominated province. So both her and him are being treated, even in shops and that they are actually, my daughter is picking up on it again. And I mean, you know what? We are living in the year 2023. And this is still going on. This sounds like something out of colonial, not even colonial times. I don't think we're that bad. We're not that bad. I mean, it is absolutely horrific. And the reason why I use South Africa as a thing is because I really think that South Africa is representative of what is happening around the world with black race and the white race. It's small, like on a small scale here, but I think it is a good model to use for how I see whites oppressing black people and the ways they're doing it. Whereas, yes, in America, sure, that it's mixed marriages and everyone's welcome and everything is fine, but is it really, no. If you really look into it, is it really? I don't think so. And I see it here too. It's equal opportunity and equal jobs and everything, but it's actually not. It's not at all. Segregation has lifted, and now you can't have, you can live wherever you like. But the decent housing and the places, the suburbs where the government provides constant services, municipal services, are predominantly white suburbs, and black people can't afford to live in them because the prices are very high, and black people have not been brought up to speed since 29 years with education and everything, and they make the criteria so high for these jobs. You've got to have so many years of work experience and university and that. And then you go into a job, say, for example, where you get given the job. One of the criteria is that you have to have a driver's license. Now, your average black South African can barely afford to eat, let alone have a car, pay for driver's lessons and maintain a car. I mean, they're barely struggling to survive. So therefore, they will automatically say be discounted from a job or whatever. It's institutionalized racism on every level. I've taken 2 schools to the South African Human Rights Commission last year. They are absolutely adamant. They are free, fair, equally run schools. My son's school, which I've now taken him out of, my son is now homeschooled because I can no longer take the backward South African racist education system in this country that's religion-based, despite them saying that it's not. It is. So our schools here are mostly Indian, Muslim, and Christian. So it's Hindu. It's predominantly the Indian people, and then the Muslim people, which is our black Africans, and then the Christian black Africans and white Africans. So what I'm saying is that, for example, the major things that each school will celebrate each year for dress-up days and concerts and fundraising days, it's Christmas, Easter, and then it's like Valentine's Day and I think that and Mother's and Father's Day. But my argument with my son's school was, why are you only celebrating Christian holidays? It's a white religion, traditionally, typically.
Right.
And they argued with me. But then, I said, well, why don't you do one Hindu holiday, one Muslim holiday, and one Christian holiday? But they wouldn't do it. All their sports houses, and I think this is the same around many places in Africa, the sports houses today in most of the schools in South Africa are still named after colonial murderers. Thomas Baines, Moffat, Rhodes, Selous. And to see black children shouting, go Selous, go Selous, go Selous for their team, do they even know who they are talking about? And Baden-Powell Day, he was the Selous Scouts, founder of Selous Scouts. Most of Baden-Powell's Selous Scouts stuff was stolen from the Zulu tribe. And he took credit for the Selous Scouts movement. Now, Baden-Powell Day, they no longer offer at the school Selous Scouts because of the connotations it has, because he murdered lots and lots of South Africans and Kenyans, horrible things done to the people in Kenya. They don't celebrate Baden-Powell Day, but it's an off-site thing that you can privately, you can go for lessons after school and you pay for that. But they still commemorate the day, and all the Selous Scouts boys are allowed to come to school in their outfits. And 2 years ago, in my son's grade, all the white boys in the class started doing Nazi salutes. Nazi salutes. And the teachers let it go. So, but the school will, and I picked up such a scene about it, and I actually went on a group to all the white parents, and I said, guys, to everyone, I said to the white parents, please, we've got to start standing up for our black, Indian, and colored parents in the school. You know, we've got to stand up, and we've got to all stand together and say that we want these practices. The Baden-Powell Day was my thing, and I wanted us to cancel it this year. I was horrified because every single white person on that group, or probably about 100 parents, turned on me, and I was blocked from the group, and I was cut off. I was told to not bring my personal issues onto the group and to take it through the right channels. Now, the right channels are put in place to further oppress. Because you go to the headmaster, you get the same attitude. You go to the school governing board body, you get the same attitude. You go to the South African Education Department, you get the same attitude. it's, you know, there are systems and things in place. But I had Black, Indian, and coloured parents contact me behind the scenes to say, you are the first person who's ever done this, who stood up for us. And then all the stories started coming out about what is happening, and it is absolutely horrific. And of course, the South African Human Rights Commission, they are also a body that once you get to a certain level, you hit a ceiling. You can't get any further than that because there's so much bribery and corruption. So what happens is that it's a case of, well, we need all the parents to come forward and give interviews and everything. And the Black parents, understandably, wouldn't do it because they've got younger kids at the school, and they said, we will be targeted. And I think the hardest thing for me was speaking to some of the Black mothers who said they are treated the same in their places of work, even though they're in executive positions and earning nice salaries and driving nice cars and everything. At the end of the day, it's institutionalized racism. And one mother was in tears, and she said to me, Lynda, how do I deal with my daughter who comes home from school and tells me how she's being treated by white people when the same thing is being done to me in my workplace every single day? How can I be strong for my daughter when the same thing's happening for me? And the one thing that made me really, really proud was all the Black and Indian and coloured parents who contacted me were like, you must be Paul's mom. They all knew my son. And it came out, your son is the only white child that really cares. And I would hear a story. My daughter's lunchbox was stolen and your son helped get it back. Then a couple of weeks later, someone else would say, such and such and such, and Paul did this for her or him and helped him. And I just thought I was really, really proud of him then, because he was doing things just by being a kind person, not doing things because this is what you do if you're not racist. You know, you let the Black boys play with you. He was actually going and helping Black children that were being oppressed further. And it's horrific. It really, really is, because I find, and I'm sure that you also find this, Todd, that in general, the Black population, Black race, if I hate having to call Black white, and we're all people, but I have to because that's the way that society defines it. Black people in general are much more forgiving and kinder and nicer than white people. Black people are far more ready to extend a hand and to have a truce and to work out differences than white people ever are. And they are not typically going to want to ever do it through violence or by taking things, you know, for themselves or by harming anybody in any way by doing that. Whereas the white people will always rather do it through underhand ways or by getting something out of it for themselves. I don't know whether it's just the white African thing, but it is destroying South Africa. South Africa is one of the biggest, wealthiest countries on this continent. We see here what is happening. I don't know how it's going to happen with the rest of Africa, which is, we've got a lot of terrorism and things going on, and we've got a lot of influence from the UK and America, but South Africa is a different kettle of fish altogether, because we've got this, and I'm going to say it, it's this Nazi German, and it really is. If you look at the Broederbond and the NGK and every single white president of this country was involved with that group, which is similar, and I don't know if you touched on it, to the Ku Klux Klan. It's that kind of thing. The RVFB, which we're not even allowed to say the word anymore. It's written now. I'm not allowed to say the word. I'm all put out in a group. It's the Afrikaner Weerstander. It's basically the Afrikaners that took up arms against Black people. And the problem with South Africa and the problem with Africa is that nobody has been held accountable for apartheid crimes. The South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission was set up. Nelson Mandela was behind that. Cyril Ramaphosa, who's the current president, was the Secretary General, whatever. He was the main negotiator with that whole process. Basically, people were granted amnesty. So if you applied for amnesty, you were absolved. You weren't allowed to be tried. So everybody, there were a few cases, of course, they had to try, and that just for show. But the most horrific crimes of apartheid have never been dealt with. Everyone's forgotten about it now, you see, but they haven't been. Nothing has been done. And those people are still allowed to live amongst us. So, and their descendants, and those are the people that are raising the white. I'm not saying they're the only ones or that they're all doing it, but I'm just saying is that those are the people who are still owning the businesses, in charge at the end of the day of all these places, like our labor courts and our judicial systems and our police and everything like that. And it's not right. The worst thing is that apartheid has never been dealt with. Black people, black children today do not even know the full story because it's watered down at school. As my friend Bongani said to me the other day, and he's 100% correct, it's been so altered that it's changing the narrative. It's soon going to end up being that the whites were actually the victims and not the black people, and that's how it's going. And the majority of black South Africans all think God is going to help them. They didn't get justice for apartheid, for the slaughter and genocide of their people. But God is going to be the one that holds these people accountable. They will get their day. Like when F.W. de Klerk died last year or the year before, a lot of black African people were celebrating because they knew that his judgment day had now come. Now was his day of trial, and he would be convicted. And it's okay because they don't have land. Their land's been taken. Because they're good people, they're keeping the peace here. Because that's what Nelson Mandela told them to do. It's the right thing to do, to be the better person. Peaceful transition. Forgive your enemy. Forget and move on. The Bible teaches us. You see, they were all brought out on this. Nelson Mandela went into prison, this feisty, Pan-Africanist revolutionary fighter. He came out a frail old man preaching love, peace, and the Bible. And unfortunately, it hooked the South African people, who to this day think that their justice will be served by this supernatural being. F.W. de Klerk has finally been punished. He's in eternal hellfire. And they will get their land back one day because they have a paradise waiting for them in heaven. This is the narrative here. So to try and explain to your average South African what's really going on, they won't believe you, because if you are atheist, it's from the devil. You see, we are from the devil. You don't speak to those people because they are devil worshippers. So it's a catch-22 situation.
Lynda, if I may ask, if I may check you there a little bit as you take a glass of water, just making sense, making an analysis of what you have presented so far. Very, very deep stuff there about South Africa. And of course, I've been following your writings and all the talking about racism and institutional racism in South Africa. And of course, we know that apartheid is something I learned in school, and the example was always South Africa. And when we think that today, after Mandela and all that, things have changed. Today we see the Parliament of South Africa having many black people, many black legislators. One would like to know why, despite having black people in power, we no longer have de Klerk. Why is it that the system remains almost the same? Because there's no way I'm going to blame the Boers. There's no way I'm going to blame whites for everything that is happening in South Africa. In my view, when we have black people in charge, when we have parliamentarians in charge of these laws, of these policies, and I know, rightly so, as we have said, that land, over 70% of the land of South Africa belongs to the white folks. So how do you address these imbalances when you have Ramaphosa, when you have all these black leaders in charge, but things continue to remain the same in the hands of a few white folks? So who do you blame? Why can't the black folks in leadership fix this lacuna? So I take it back to you. How do we blame guys who have the resources without looking at the guys who don't fix the challenges, who don't ensure that there's the equity? Where do we go wrong here? How do you place blame to the African leaders, to the Black Africans? Because even the white Africans, they have been there for generations. But how do we fix the blame without and avoid looking at the Black folks in power?
I think the biggest thing we need to start doing is starting to realize that we've got brains to think for ourselves, because we just believe everything we're told. We believe what we're told in our schools. We believe what we're told in our churches, and it's wrong. We believe our history, and it's wrong. It's all a lie. And the thing is that in South Africa, the white people believe their history, and that's all a lie, and they don't know it, and the Black people also. And the thing at the end of the day is that in order for us to solve the issues, we have to go backwards. We have to go to history. And I've seen, like, through the work that Ebenezer's doing, and through what I have seen, the horrific, sorry, I've got a fan on here, so oppression of Black people is just like the late 90s with labor abuse cases. I was just horrified at Black people that are deliberately lying and giving false evidence and stuff to oppress their Black brothers after so many years of oppression. But we know that our African presidents are all old, and they're all from the same kind of, they were all young revolutionaries during our fights for independences. If you look at people like Buhari and that, you know, they were generals in armies. Most of them have a military background. Then you look at how many of them went for military training in the UK, and if you look at the connections between them, and that they are obviously have always been in the pocket. They cut deals during our independences with the UK and the UN. I mean, we look at Nigeria, 1960, they were the one first to get the independence, and UN was there. They just found oil as well, and UN was there with the foot in the door with a permanent base, and they're still there all these years later. And you look at all the trouble in Nigeria today. We need to start seeing the bigger picture. Black people need to stop seeing white people as being superior and something to look up to, and believe white people and think that white people are not corrupt. White people taught Black people how to be corrupt. There was no murder, rape, genocide, torture, abuse until the white colonialists set foot on this continent. And that is the honest truth. I'm not being radical or whatever. I'm telling you the honest truth. We did not mass murder and rape and torture our people. It's just not an African thing. Now it has become an African thing. And what I'm saying is that people have got to open their eyes to the bigger picture. And no Black people are interested in their history, really. Here, not in South Africa. They don't want to know about it. That their history's a lie. And we still have oral history that people can tell us from our grandparents and our great-grandparents. I have my white oral history, my white version of lies that were spoken about my country, Zimbabwe, and things. There are people being hailed to this day as heroes, with buildings named after them and everything, that are the worst, most oppressive, genocidal killers that people are naming schools after and everything still today. But it all boils down to religion, Kato, because how do you explain to your average Christian Black African about things like evolution and about things like the mysteries of Egypt and the advancement of civilization and things, because it goes against the Adam and Eve, the Genesis story of how the world was created in 7 days and all that nonsense? That's the thing. So we have to start with our children. It's taken hundreds and hundreds of years to get to this stage. It's not going to be a problem that's solved overnight. I think and I don't know what Todd said about the American situation. We have to start with our children. But how do we start with our children when our children are being raised by people with those attitudes still, like in South Africa? And Black children are still being raised to this day, whether they know it or not, by their parents, as somehow holding white people in like some kind of high regard. I saw a white guy on one of the Nigerian groups making lewd comments to one of the black Nigerian women, and nothing was said about it. And I went to some of my friends behind the scenes and I said, why are you putting up with this shit? You wouldn't do it if it was one of your men saying those things to her. But why are you letting him do it? Because he's white, you see. And I said, he has to toe the line and earn his respect from you, just like it's a two-way thing. You don't automatically grant a white person your respect, your trust, because that is what's happened. Because black African people are kind, welcoming, lovely people by nature. And that is being exploited. And if people could just, first of all, start learning their real history and realizing about Egypt and about the fact that religion was never a thing here. And I've recently, with Ebenezer, I've been trying to educate myself about African genetics for every single bit of information I can get, because I'm trying to help friends here in South Africa. Because there's lots of things about African history, like the Xhosa slaughtering all their cattle, which I don't believe is true. Like for example, like this one example, the true African people, your cattle are absolutely prized, almost spiritual. You're connected to your cattle. There's no ways the Xhosa people would have taken the prophecy of a young girl and all slaughtered all the cattle in that. So there's a lot of stuff like that. But basically, at the end of the day, and I'd love someone with genetic history and experience to come on, is that I've gone through so many reports and things, and I've worked from today backwards, and I've seen that we all originate from a source group of genes in the Great Lakes region of Africa, and that from there, the genetics are Kushite, which is Kemet, Nubia, it's Egypt. And
speaking of which, Lynda, to check you there, we're talking about a book by our brother Ebenezer Helu, the precious Ebenezer's book, The Untold History of Black Race and the Fall of African Civilization. By Ebenezer Precious Arches Helu, and order one of those books, copies of those books, please contact our friend here, Todd Meyer, at that email. You'll be able to get a copy of that book to educate yourself, to get to know more about the history which Lynda Tilley is talking about right about now. So, Lynda.
Thanks, Kato. And I will keep this brief now, but this is something that I'd love to get experts in on to talk about as well in detail. Precious is telling us so much about Egypt and about the great original black race there. We have magnificent kingdoms across Africa that I would love everyone in each of their countries to start exposing things and talking about things. We have the kingdom of Monomotapa, which is where I was born, which is Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, those countries. We have the Buganda kingdom, we have the Biafra kingdom, we have so many. And if we get to know where our true African kingdoms were and where our origins are, we can maybe also understand better why such places like Nigeria, Sudan are targeted. And I'll tell you something, that the base genes that they still say, there's a what do they call it? Non-human, there's still a gene that they don't know, but basically we all originate from Kushites, from Egypt, and migrated down from Africa, from the Great Lakes region. Yep. Okay, now unfortunately, no one knows the real names of the lakes. Well, they can't. Everyone knows Lake Victoria, Lake Malawi, Lake Turkana, not the African names, but all those lakes. East African genetics are significant from long ago, and Kushites. And Lynda, West African genetics.
I need to check you there. Check you there. We have overshot our time for today.
Yes.
And I'm happy that we were able to have these great things from you, of course, and from Todd. I would like to suggest that we have this conversation continued next weekend. Of course, looking at the things we have left behind, I know We want to talk about Zimbabwe, we want to talk about Tanzania, Kenya, of course, Uganda, and all the other issues. Of course, Todd will come in with a different perspective about the things he has been doing for humanity, and of course, promoting this book for Ebenezer, but also talking about how do we help humanity as humanists going forward, so that we don't look at ourselves as white, Asians, blacks. We look at ourselves as human beings. So I'd like to invite Todd to give us a closing shot, and then we shall go back to Lynda to close it, and then we shall make it a day, have it a day, and then we shall be able to follow this up next Saturday if all of you permit, so that we can be able to have this conversation more going, and we continue having that consistency of having this beautiful conversation ongoing. Todd, please, back to you. Let us hear your parting shots.
All right. Well, thank you. If there's one thing I can leave here now for the viewers, whether they're watching today or watching when they're able to later, is that it takes, one person to start something, others will follow. If you want to be a part of making things better, reach out to other people. Find other people that consider other people important, that look past race, that look more at the human aspect of our existence. If you contact one person or talk with one person about it, have them talk to somebody, and then so on and so forth. That's how it grows. So be active, be a part of this, and you can do your own thing in your own town. Pull your people together, have conversations. Try to also reach across the aisle and talk to those who you have difficulties with. Try to find common ground to start with, because then if you have that common ground and you each look at each other as people, when you do have problems, they'll be a whole lot easier to fix. But yeah, get involved. If anybody has questions for me, I have a new email address that is going to be just for Precious's book. If you have questions for me directly, I'm always available. Shoot me an email. I'll get right back to you. Just get involved. Be part of the action. Be a part of making things better for everyone. And we just do it one person at a time. Lynda?
One person at a time.
That's right.
Get involved.
Yeah.
Those are very powerful words there, Todd. Thank you so much. And your email is humanrace121@gmail.com. Lynda, going back to you as we sum up today's conversation, today's discussion on systematic racism and the way forward. About South Africa, what, in your view, can be done to rectify the situation? How do we move?
People have to be given their land back, and people have to be, amends have to be made, apologies have to be given, and white people need to own up to what their ancestors have done in this country, and they need to know that the Rainbow Nation isn't just something on paper, and it's not just words in the Constitution. They've got to start living that. And if they don't like it, or they see that feel that they are superior to other people, then they must leave Africa, because Africa is a place of the black people. It's the original cradle of humankind, and they have no right to be here unless they're working and helping the black people to build this continent back up and to fight our same enemy together. We are all related genetically. Every single tribe across Africa originates from the same source genetics. We as white people have the original mitochondrial E, black genetic, and we all have black genetics that have crossed into our bloodlines since before slavery and all that stuff that we're not told about. So we are all connected, and how we can judge, how we as whites can judge black people They are our ancestors. They are the reason why we are here. It's because of Black people. We all carry the Black gene that will never disappear from us, from the female mitochondrial gene. We've got to just wake up and look past this Adam and Eve nonsense and all this stuff and wake up, because it's religion is keeping us with blinkers on our eyes, and we've got to drop those now. People will easily believe what they see on TikTok or what they read on Google or Wikipedia or hear from their pastor on a Sunday in church. But will they listen to the truth with the facts you're trying to present to them of things like there's no God, it's all a con? They won't do it. We've got to just change that mindset. So thank you so much, Todd, for joining us as well from the other side of the world and for just connecting. It's just wonderful.
It's
Thank you
awesome
so much,
that we can
Lynda.
have these formats to do this. This is very nice because we
It
can
really
be connected
is.
from anywhere.
It's
And
phenomenal.
yeah, it's awesome. I appreciate your having me back.
Well, it's
Thank
great.
you so much, Todd. Thank you so much, Lynda. We are going to definitely have you back next Saturday if you are available, so that we can continue this discussion. I know we are going to be able to build an audience by being consistent, and it's very important you can be able to have another show like this, and we continue sharing these views and much more. If all of us can be available.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm going to start
have
writing and documenting all my stuff with evidence as well that people can access and read. I think it's very important to do that.
Sure.
So people can go and fact check for themselves if they don't believe what I'm telling them. And I also want to talk to Todd and you about the wiki, the slave project, the African slave project on Wikipedia, which is the world's family tree that we're building. I'm one of the few Africans on there. I'm trying to get people involved, and I just think Todd would be perfect for that. It's trying to connect slaves back to their ancestral roots, the descendants and the remains of slaves that are being found in America. So I'll chat to you personally, privately about that, Todd. I'll contact you about that. I think it would be something that.
I think another thing that would be helpful is there's a big deal going on right now. It's been 30, 40 years in the making, but reparations.
Yes.
I think we could talk a lot about that. That would be a good subject to tackle. I've got a lot of insight on that. So maybe next week or whenever you guys feel you want me to come back, I'd sure be available.
That would be
Next
great.
weekend we are with you.
Because we've got that issue here. We need repatriations in Africa amongst the African people with land and things as well. So I'll be very interesting, as you say, it's a 30-year in the making, the whole concept and core structure of that's been put together, because that's perhaps a model that we can also learn from Kato here.
Sure. You bet.
So that would be very interesting.
Todd, thank you so much, Lynda. Thank you so much, everyone who has been watching. And we promise to be back next weekend and add more on this very interesting conversation.
Glad to help. Okay.
Thanks so much. And thanks, Jennifer and Brian behind the scenes. Love you guys. Thanks for the snacks. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.